interesting because really what you got was the gist of the whole thing, which is that information tends to transfer together. The most single significant thing that I come away with in my studies of genetics and blood group is that if you look at chromosome number 9, which is where your blood type is, you go all the way at the bottom, there's a big band of black material, which turns out to be a chunk of DNA. Why would you require so much DNA when basically all you need to do in order to get a blood type is make one enzyme? So you just need 3 enzymes to determine ABO blood type. Why is there so much DNA over there? Well, it's because, think about it, how many other places on a human being can you code for differences? We all have the same number of fingers. We all have the same number of arms. So you can't go to the arm number gene and make anything different. You can go to the eye color gene, but it's not, the genes in terms of eye color, there's a little bit of waffling. They're not really classically dominant recessive like blood group is, much on-off kind of thing. So what nature discovered is that this is a great place to link all sorts of stuff if you want to make some people different. You want to give this person high stomach acid, you put it over on the O gene. You want to give this person the ability to have certain changes in the function of their cardiovascular system, you put it over here. So the idea is, you think about it as a series of hooks. That chromosome number 9 has got a series of hooks, and depending upon what your body is going to try and make a little bit different, because remember, blood groups came out of a tradition of changing with regard to the environment, different types of foods and things. So the basic message in this is that on a deep genetic level, much like a puppeteer is playing a marionette, the genetics are influencing the biology, in many cases in differences you can understand by virtue of your blood type. Very simple stuff, complicated but simple. It's interesting also too, the way, if you can see from blood groups, the genetics are very simple as well. If we have in genetics recessive and dominant, so a dominant gene is always powerful over recessive. It's like brown eyes are stronger than blue eyes. If you get a gene for brown eyes and a gene for blue eyes, you get brown eyes, sort of. Blood types like that too. A and B are dominant to O. So if mama gives you an A gene and daddy gives you an O gene, you have AO, but you're A, because the A gene is dominant to the O gene. However, you can make one of your kids O if you pass on the O gene to your offspring and you get another one from your partner. So it goes on, you see. The funny part is that A and B are not dominant to each other, which means basically if you get an A gene from mommy and a B gene from daddy, you're AB. See, they're co-dominant. But they're both dominant to O. So the only way you can be an O is to get 2 O genes. That's the only way you can have blue eyes, is to get 2 blue eye genes, because blue eyes are recessive as well. Most interesting thing here, I think, is this ultimately the notion when you talk to people in science about blood type, they go, well, wait a minute, this is absurd. A blood type is a marker on a red blood cell, and you're telling people what to eat. And how can that be? How can a red blood cell be influencing what a person eats? And you ultimately tell them, well, no, it's occurring higher up. Why is your blood cell actually turning a level of an enzyme higher in one blood type? Why is it turning a level of acid higher in one blood type? Because these little distinctions, remember, this was before antibiotics. It was before immunizations and vaccinations. These would have been different. These would have been important distinctions a long time ago. And they still are to a degree. I mean, you carry them with you. You certainly are omnivorous. I mean, most people can eat a variety of things. But those little strengths and weaknesses are things that you can recognize, you can do something about. So the idea here basically is to understand that stress, for instance, has such a big genetic component with blood type. I mean, basically, you look at type O and type A again. What do we know about type O? Well, remember that thing we talked about, there was a link with dopamine. Dopamine is one of those funny molecules. It's not that popular anymore. Everybody's into serotonin because everyone's taking Prozac. Everyone's into serotonin. But dopamine is more interesting because dopamine is like what we call in neurology the reptilian emotions. In other words, it's the lower emotions. Serotonin is like higher emotions in a lot of ways, but dopamine is mostly I'm happy, I'm sad. I don't know why, I'm just happy or I'm sad. It's involved in impulse. It's involved, for instance, in the sensations of orgasm. Deep levels of pleasure are associated with dopamine. on a genetic level, people who are type O have difficulties maintaining adequate levels of dopamine because they have too much of an enzyme that makes them convert their dopamine to adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is a different molecule. Adrenaline, everyone knows adrenaline. It's what makes people, when you have too much adrenaline, you get heart races, you get anxiety, you get panic attacks. So here's a situation where one blood group, if they're not careful, they convert the dopamine, which is a happy molecule, into adrenaline, which is an anxiety molecule. The interesting thing is that actually the two single best ways to control this were things my father was telling his patients 50 years ago. High protein diet, physical exercise. If you're type O, you could have seen my father in 1964 and he would have told you, eat a high protein diet, do a lot of physical exercise. And those are the two things that studies again and again and again have shown modulate the conversion of dopamine and adrenaline. So what you'd like to do is have a balance. You want a little bit of adrenaline if you're type O, but you want to be able to control the level of dopamine because this is going to have effects, for instance, in terms of your satisfaction, mood elevation. There's a variety of neurochemical reactions to stress that are linked to blood type, not just the dopamine connection in type O. Another chemical called cortisol is linked with type A as well. Now, cortisol is not all that well known, but it's the type of cortisone you make. In other words, it's your natural cortisone. Let's just simplify it. I know it's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it's a type of natural cortisone that you make when you're under stress. So for instance, under stress, your adrenal gland makes a lot of cortisol. Now, cortisol has the effect of having your metabolism convert more towards breaking up muscle. It has the effect of suppressing your immune system, and it aggravates a lot of cardiovascular problems. And it's been shown that people who are type A, when they're under stress, have too high a level of this, and they don't get rid of it all that much. The interesting thing is, what's the exercise that's the most beneficial for getting rid of excess cortisol? Turns out to be yoga. Again, you can have seen any one of the practitioners in my father's office in the 60s, and if he was type A, you were type A, he would have told you you should learn to do yoga. And this is without the studies. He was making these characterizations based upon things he had been able to ascertain were beneficial, based upon observation. But it turns out that there are studies that show that this is the premier way of getting your cortisol levels under control, do yoga. So type A, doing the kind of aerobics and things, not bad exercise, but it doesn't attack the way that they stress out. And type O, yoga's great, but it doesn't attack the way that they chemically stress out. With blood type, you can design the exercise to be able to give you not only the benefit of the exercise, but the most effective way of modulating stress.